This is 10-star Zoh Shia in Monster Hunter Wilds, a more difficult variant of the original Zoh Shia fight. It has the exact same moveset and does nothing different from the regular version of the fight, so how exactly is it more difficult? Even though mechanically this fight is one-to-one identical, this version has big number. A bit of bad RNG paired with being slightly out of position can mean certain death. Meanwhile, here's another endgame fight in Wilds, also at the 10-star difficulty tier, Arc-Tempered Arkveld. Compared to its normal counterpart, this is a completely different fight. Multiple brand new combos and movesets, a new Enrage mode where it gains a big power up, AoE mechanics, and even at a foundational level, the monster moves faster, so any aspects of the fight that remain the same are still more difficult to keep up with. Sure, much like 10-star Zoh Shia, this guy also has instant cart potential of its own, but when the rest of the fight matches that level of intensity, it blends in well. Compare this back to 10-star Zoh Shia again, you're doing the same old fight, but at a moment's notice, a bit of splash damage from an AoE will take you from 100 to 0. Assuming you're familiar with this nuisance, nothing else in the fight will demand your attention. You can even stunlock Zoh for good chunks of time by popping wounds when they appear. There is no new learning curve, it's simply more punishing when you do make a mistake. And when a mistake can consist of standing within a 30-foot radius of it, the one shot feels more frustrating than it does deserved. Even while making this video, 10-star Gog Mazios came out, and this guy amplifies the problem to an even greater extent. 10-star Gog is taking good players 40 plus minutes to clear solo. In this case, the difficulty isn't coming from mechanics either. After all, much like Zoh, they are identical. The challenge is instead coming from endurance. One mistake in this marathon of a hunt and you're finished. There's other fights in Wilds that can feel quite hit or miss in the same regard. As you've likely guessed by now or experienced for yourself, in Monster Hunter, Arc-Tempered monsters are powered up versions of their existing fights. Excluding Arkveld, we have 4 other ATs, all of which gain an extra move or two and some additional mechanics. Raidao gains an AoE lightning effect that follows its path. Uvduna creates more powerful waves that can push the player around and damage them. New Udra emits heat damage and can leave pools of fire on the ground. And Jin Dahad, well, not much changes. He gets a new move which is a similar breath based attack to what he possesses anyway, and there's a bit of AoE follow up on moves you already know to avoid in the first place. But for a lot of people, this is the hardest hunt out of the 4 mentioned. Why? Because he has a lot of HP, hits like a truck, and has clunky hitboxes. And so you know I'm being non-biased, I am a Jin Dahad enjoyer. It's one of my favourite fights in the whole series. However, when Jin turning around is effectively half of your HP gone, I understand why so many people share frustration with the fight. And sure, while many attacks are very easily avoidable if you know how to do so, the large HP pool results in the fight dragging on for a while. When a hunt lasts 20 minutes instead of 10, difficulty isn't necessarily higher, it's just that the odds of something eventually going wrong increases. And this is where the illusion of difficulty can really start to show in games. But what isn't an illusion is how easy it is to click like and subscribe. Okay, jokes aside, fights like AT Jin Dahad or 10-star Zoh Shia aren't really asking you to learn anything new. The mechanics haven't evolved, the monster hasn't evolved, but the numbers have. More health, more damage, longer hunts. The difficulty isn't coming from mastering the fight, it's coming from surviving it long enough. But let's step away from Wilds for a minute, because this conversation is not anything new to the series. When Fatalis was added to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, it was immediately one of the hardest fights the series had ever seen. Players were carting left and right, hunts were failing constantly, and for a while it genuinely felt impossible to many players. But something interesting happened over time. Instead of feeling frustrated with the fight, players started respecting it. So why is Fatalis different from the previously mentioned examples? Because I mean, he also has his huge punishes, clunky hitboxes, and a map-wide AoE. And the reason for that is quite simple. Fatalis doesn't just punish mistakes harder, it demands that you stop making them in the first place. Unlike some of the examples we've looked at so far, Fatalis doesn't purely rely on inflated numbers to create the difficulty. the fight evolves constantly as it goes on. Each phase introduces new mechanics, new positioning requirements, and new things the player has to actively think about. Certain distances will encourage the AI to use particular attacks. Let's look at his cone breath attack for example. If the player is stood near the exploding magma globes, Fatalis becomes more likely to use the cone, and this is for good reason. You had two options in that moment. If you chose to roll away from the globes and gain distance from the dragon, the cone attack will be near unavoidable. The hunter who chooses to run towards Fatalis will be close enough to avoid the attack entirely, while setting themselves up to hit his head, the most important target of the fight, for big damage. Another consideration is his end of map nukes. When a player completes a phase, Fatalis will fly up into the air and begin using a map-wide AoE attack. After a period of time, it will guarantee kill the player if they are still caught out in the open. However, look at phase 1. There is a safe spot in the corner that allows you to survive the assault. So what's the learning moment here? The player needs to gain a good feel for their damage output to gauge when the phase transition is close to occurring, at which point they should try to drag Fatalis near the safe spot so you can reach it easily when the AoE begins. Initially, the attack is very easy to avoid, but at the end of phase 2, you are required to climb up a barricade behind a door and pull its closing lever before the flame intensity takes you out. The same mechanic, but there's now higher stakes and it's harder to execute. And following the theme, in phase 3, the same mechanic ramps up yet again. This time, he'll do a map-wide breath attack 3 times, flying to different corners of the arena with each instance. And if you haven't broken his head yet, the fire is going to do even more damage, shortening the window you have to get to safety. In essence, this is the same mechanic multiple times across each phase, but it adds an additional factor each time. You won't succeed at doing the phase 2 variation consistently unless you learn to deal with it in phase 1. Once you learn the fight, Fatalis isn't all that mechanically challenging. He telegraphs in obvious manners, he can be manipulated by positioning, and siege equipment can guarantee big openings. It's a fight built around learning and knowledge checks. For the majority of us, the first few attempts end in complete disaster, but each failure teaches you something valuable. Where to stand, when to commit to damage, and when to get out. Looping back to Wilds, ultimately, the core issue lies in the fact that, unlike Fatalis, the original variations of the example hunts like Jin or Zoh Shia were never meant to be high stake fights. The Arc-Tempered and 10-star tag are simply the devs' attempt to add challenge to fights after the fact, and that's the difference between real difficulty and the illusion of difficulty. By no means does this mean you're not allowed to enjoy them. Generally speaking, I've had a great time with every single one. Especially when you look at how far Wilds has ventured from its beginnings, the additional challenge is warmly welcomed regardless of how it's delivered. However, as we move forward into the expansion, that is where we need to see fights that are designed to be tough from the roots up. Event quests here and there, in which early monsters are powered up to funny extents like Rompopolo, are completely fine, but the core design of challenge shouldn't come from simply taking an existing fight and scaling up its numbers. In the DLC, I would like to see new or reworked monsters that offer a dynamic fight with unique mechanics off the bat. The star tier system has given us a good baseline for how long or resistant a fight should be, and the Arc-Tempereds show us the real way to ramp up existing monsters. If Capcom can find the happy middle ground of these factors, we'll have some truly amazing hunts waiting for us in the near future. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing future Monster Hunter content. And if you'd like to see the 10-star Arkveld fight in a bit more detail, please click the video on screen now. Thanks for watching.